Looking to take your financial knowledge to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to Ask Ralph, offering accounting, technical, and financial advice. Whether you're looking to save taxes or improve your business, he's got you covered. Here's your host of Ask Ralph, Ralph Eastup Jr.
Welcome back to the Ask Ralph Show. A lot of times I will get asked, what should someone be looking for in a tax preparer? So I thought I would tackle that question a little bit different today and sort of ask it by saying these are the 6 things that your tax preparer doesn't want you to know. First one is this, and that is I'm not prepared to prepare your taxes. And that may seem like a little bit of a tongue twister. But what we're talking about here is that basically in the United States, anyone who is willing to pay to get what's called a PTIN, which is a Preparer Tax Identification Number, which is issued by the IRS and pay the $64.25 fee, can basically hold themselves out as being someone that can prepare your taxes. So what I'm basically saying to you is there is no required tax expertise in order to get this PTIN number. Yes, now that being said, those of us who are licensed accountants or CPAs or public accountants or attorneys also have to get these PTIN numbers. But just because someone has a PTIN number doesn't mean that they're necessarily qualified to prepare your taxes. So just because a business advertises that it files taxes doesn't mean that its preparers have educational expertise or experience doing so. When you work with licensed accountants, you increase the likelihood of dealing with well-educated professionals who have the necessary experience to guide you in a complex situation. So first one to watch out for is they might not be prepared to prepare your taxes. Number 2 things you don't hear from your tax preparer is just because I'm a CPA doesn't mean I'm a tax expert. And I get this question a lot. Just because someone holds themselves out to be a certified public accountant doesn't necessarily mean that they're a tax expert. In reality, the majority of CPAs are actually auditors who have little exposure to the tax side of the accounting world, much less the specifics of personal taxes. Even those who are tax CPAs run into similar problems. For example, a CPA could be incredibly knowledgeable on the international taxation front of large publicly traded companies, but still have little experience in preparing personal taxes. So when you're looking for someone to prepare your taxes, just because someone is a CPA or licensed accountant doesn't necessarily mean that they're prepared or that they have the knowledge and experience to prepare taxes. That's something you want to get into a discussion with them and understand what their experience has been. Number 3, I didn't prepare your return. Now, this gets into a whole big discussion. It's something in my practice I get asked a lot about. And that is, who is actually going to be preparing my taxes? And I can't tell you how many clients I've picked up because they've gone to an accounting firm and they may meet with, a senior member or a senior partner in the accounting firm. But what they find out is that a junior accountant or some entry-level person is actually the one that prepares the tax return and puts all the information in, and then a partner might review it. Another big thing that's been going on in the market lately is the outsourcing of tax returns completely. And I've had companies approach me about doing this, and basically what we would do, and we don't do this in our practice, but one of the things you could do is you can simply scan in all the client's documents, and then there are companies overseas that will prepare the tax returns based on the documents, and then the only thing you've left to do is just review the finished product. So you really want to ask that question about, who is actually going to be preparing my tax returns? The next thing is I've conservatively prepared your tax return, maybe a little too much. What are we talking about here? Now what we're talking about is, do you have a tax preparer or an accountant who is simply using the most simple form of the tax preparation, just putting in the information and not really taking a look to see if there's any research or potential advantages or exceptions that they can use when preparing your return? Now, a lot of times this is done for 3 main reasons. And those are the following. Number 1, to reduce your odds of getting a tax notice. The problem is that's done at the cost of a higher tax bill. So there are some times when things are not so black and white and there's some gray areas that can be explored. Number 2, it keeps costs down. Identifying the exceptions takes time, which is often billed for on an hourly basis. That all comes down to experience and understanding of what they're doing with your tax return. And then the final thing, quite frankly, and this is a simple one, is to reduce the preparer's liability in the event you're audited, lose, or try to recover the funds. And what the bottom line here is that if you want to benefit from the complexities of the tax code, you've got to be willing to pay fees necessary to prepare and research the issue, especially if you have a complicated situation. It's not wasting your money if you have a very complex situation and you need to pay an accountant to look into that scenario for you. Now, they mention here is that I'm afraid to look more deeply into issues, even though it may save you money. And this comes back to that old adage of whenever you're talking to a accountant or an attorney, you've got that belief that the clock is always ticking. But you have to remember that the cost can be worth it. Now, the way that we battle that in our firm is that I generally like to have an in-person meeting with each of the people that I prepare tax returns for, at which time I can talk about, different things that are going on. Now, if they're returning clients, usually this isn't that complicated unless there's been some sort of life event which has changed to make their taxes more complicated in the future. And one of the things you want to mention to your tax preparer is let your preparer know that you want him or her to be on the lookout for tax saving opportunities. Now, in my practice, that's something we do. It's something we're going to ask about during the meeting, or if we see some documentation that the client's provided, it's something we're really going to take a look at and see if we can't get into more of a discussion about and look for some potential savings areas. Now, there's one more here that they listed, and that's I'm not your record retention bureau. And what they're saying here, and this is true, your tax preparer may have hundreds, if not thousands of clients. When you add it all up, keeping your tax records forever is a costly, risk-laden exercise. And the problem is there are no industry-wide standards on document retention, and your records may ultimately be purged according to your tax preparer's unique policy. Knowing this policy up front and offering to pay for archiving services needed will help you avoid being empty-handed if an tax official comes knocking at your door. Now, one of the things that we do in our practice, which I see a lot more accountants doing more of, and that is using the benefit of digital storage. We happen to use a program called Smart Vault. And this is something that, we don't guarantee for clients, but as part of our engagement letter or our agreement to do your returns, we agree to hold on to copies of your return in our Smart Vault archive. So that's something you want to find out from, when you're engaging with an accounting firm. What is their document retention policy? They obviously want to, they should give you a copy of your return, and it may be wise for you to keep both a paper copy and some sort of digital copy. But you also might want to, find out what their rules and, how do they handle your documents? What's what we call source documents. So what we generally do for our clients is we save a copy of the return as prepared, and we also keep a copy of the source documents. And I've had clients come back to me, a year or two later, perhaps they're applying for a mortgage or something like that, and say, hey, Ralph, can I get a copy of my return? So I hope this was helpful. These are the things that the tax preparers don't ask you, but it's something you want to know.
You've been listening to Ask Ralph, brought to you by Saggio Accounting Plus. Please subscribe to and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a rating and review. Our podcast is produced by Carolyn Peters. Thank you for listening, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Ask Ralph Media. You can also hear me each week on 1450 WILM and on 1410 WDOV in Delaware, and on the iHeartRadio app. Submit your questions or ideas for future shows by sending an email to AskRalph@AskRalph.com.
The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.